Now, I promised I was going to give you something really, really tactical. And so I'm definitely going to do it. So there's a lot of changes you might be making about your pricing, but like, how do we actually communicate those changes? Well, I find that when people are thinking about raising their price, for example, or even changing up their value metric, like we talked about, or changing up their features or their tiers, they get really worried because they kind of think that people don't realize that things cost money, right? They think, oh, people are going to be scared of pricing. And what's kind of cool is that when you do your research, you start to realize that like people are okay as long as you don't mess up how you communicate and don't mess up what you're actually doing, which I understand is a higher bar, but let me explain. So the first thing is like I'm not a big fan of legacying your pricing. I think it's one of those things where if you keep old customers on their existing plans, oftentimes they don't necessarily like really see the value, and all of a sudden you're capping your growth on those particular customers. But you can make a value judgment if you want to keep people on their plans. But if you're not, or even if you're just going to raise prices or change prices on new customers, you got to do your research. And we're not going to be able to go deep into how to do that research right now. But it's really, really important to understand like if we're at $50 a month, should we be increasing it to $100 a month, or should we be increasing to $200 a month? You want to obviously know that before you communicate it. And once you have that particular number, let's say we're raising prices by 30% or something along that line, then it really comes down to making sure we do an impact analysis, just making sure that no one's getting probably greater than like a 50 to 75% increase on their price. And if you do have to raise your prices that much, you can choose to rip the Band-Aid off, or you can essentially choose to stage that out over a number of years, because you're really only going to want to raise prices maybe once on a customer per year, but not necessarily more than once unless you're really, really flying. Now, the messaging is where things are key. And don't everyone steal this email because you're going to ruin it for everybody. But here's a really, really good framework and a template. So if I'm changing or raising a price on someone, I'm going to first remind them of how much value that I've provided them. Hey, we've made you this much money. We've brought you this many contacts. You've processed this many leads, whatever it ends up being. I'm going to remind you like, hey, there's this new feature that we launched. And also there's this other feature that you love because you use it every single day. I'm actually pulling in that data. Then I'm going to say, in the context of them, for us to make the product better for them, we need to increase our prices. No matter how beloved your product is, everyone's still going to be a little bit shocked. And so I'm going to go, but because you've been so loyal to us, you've used us for the past 4.5 years, we're raising prices on everyone else who wasn't loyal. But for you, we're going to keep your existing price for the next X months. And that's worth this much to you, which is a really, really powerful way because it's about them, right? It's always going to shock people still. So give people an out. Hey, if you have any questions, let me know. And then my personal favorite, if this materially impacts your business or your life, if you're a consumer product, let me know and we'll work something out. This is for two types of people. It's for the people probably watching this. We never want to spend more money, but if you went through and you told me all the value and all this other stuff, I'd go, okay, I'm not going to cause a fuss. Or for its people who are actually impacted, it's one of those things that, hey, they'll try to negotiate and you can use a really good brand opportunity to be like, don't worry about it. We'll figure it out from there. But the important thing, make it about them, not about you. And that legacy discount works really, really well. To wrap up here, just because I'm a little over time, hopefully you realize this is not hard. It is definitely just a process. You just got to cuddle with the chaos of it, just like every other thing within your business. And if I can be more helpful, this is my email address. I'm mostly on Twitter. But yeah, thanks for having me. And thanks for letting me go a little bit over here, Armando and crew.
It's all good. Love you, Patrick. I think the thing that I appreciate the most about you and what you did with ProfitWell is that you got this down to a science. And like there is proof points everywhere. And this is also my personal experience. Like pricing and packaging is the single least appreciated value metric for pretty much 100% of the companies.
Yeah.
Right. Early stage companies, 100% of them. Mid stage companies, very, very many, like very, very few percent. There's later stage companies as well. And another thing that I experienced, which is surprising for most people, which I'm curious whether it's your experience as well. And in the meantime, if anyone has additional questions, feel free to write them in the comments here, is that when you do price increases, and like your email, it's a surefire way of manage that. So I appreciate you sharing that. When you do price increases, there is very little to no pushback from customers when you do it right. Is that what it is as well?
So it does depend. I think to make a nice concrete answer here, most of the time people never did any research on what they should be charged anyways. Like they just like they read something and they were like, oh, Basecamp charges $100 per month. We should just do that, right?
Or like
Yeah, let's just do that, right? And this is why I was kind of showing you like the evolution of like how companies actually like
I love
get
it.
better at
Features
pricing.
not built yet. Features we will never build.
Yeah, right. But the thing is like you set it at $50, $100, right? And then you just like set it. That was just the next 5 years. And the problem is that your customers, a lot of them might be looking at that and seeing it. Your prospects might be seeing it as too cheap. And then there's some folks who think it's too expensive. And this is why it goes to the three prices. But to your point, one of the biggest things is because you haven't done that homework, if you're not losing deals because of your price, you're not testing that pricing power, right? You actually might be losing deals because of that price. And so I have found that about 80 to 90% of companies that I've interacted with or seen the data on, they're underpriced. And then when they do this, there's a little bit of churn because it's just like sending a receipt, right? Like you'll remind people they're purchasing something. So some people they're like, oh yeah, I don't want that product anymore. But then you'll see the churn go actually lower than it once was. And I love seeing people. This is why I wrote the emails, because I was like, even if you copy and paste it, which you shouldn't, you get, it's like a gateway drug. You're like, oh, that was fine. We had one guy who complained, but that was because our support experience was bad for him. But let's do again. Let's do something else. Let's figure something else out. It's kind of like a gateway into things. You just have to get over that anxiety.
And the other thing that I find most people don't appreciate is that these days software is really competing with the cost of hiring someone, right? Or having a team that does this in a manual, processy kind of way, right? And then it goes back to your comment around turnover and raise in terms of compensations and inefficiencies there. And so that also to some degree advocates for a fair price that is a portion of that value. And in that sense, it's probably higher than you think.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think it's just one of those things that, like I said in the beginning, it's like everything else in your business. Treat it like a process, treat it like product development, customer development, find a framework. The number you're caring about is revenue per customer. That's the number that ARPU, ACV, whatever your business allows, that's the number that should be going up and to the right over time.